but anyways, there is, but delay. All right, page 82, the Daily Tanya for Friday. Um, we're continuing letter number 4 of Igeres HaKodesh, the Holy Epistle, letters of the Alter Rebbe. This is a letter which is essentially a fundraising letter of Rabbi Shner Zalman, because among his many incredible, unbelievable responsibilities that he took upon himself, in addition to creating this whole school of theology called Chabad, in addition to being a spokesman for the whole Hasidic movement, in addition to codifying an updated version of the Code of Jewish Law, et cetera, he took upon himself to be the administrator for the funds to support one of the first aliyahs in 75, 76, of the first Hasidic aliyah to the Holy Land, which was really a backwaters, very poor, the land of Israel was really poor, and anybody that lived there, it was a very small community, relied on diaspora support. So he took upon himself this fund called Kolel Chabad, which is a fund to support the poor in Israel. And it relied upon the Hasidim in Russia, Ukraine, Russia, supporting it. Now, you have to understand, the Hasidim of Russia and Ukraine and Belarus, it was today's Belarus, were extremely poor. It wasn't like, they were like, wealthy American Jews that could cut out a check. They were not, it was not an affluent community. And yet he would expect support for this Israel fund. And it still goes. It's one of the oldest, I think it's the oldest active charity for supporting the poor in Israel to this day. Kol El Chabad, you could check it out. So he'd write these letters that are, they're fundraising. It's like, how do you say groshi? How do you say give groshi? Give die groshi. Give money. It's a very simple line. But he would explain it with a little bit of a mystical reasoning of why we have to give charity, what it does for our souls. So he's explaining the following, that yesterday we talked about of the heart of every Jew. Thank you. There is a outer layer of the heart and an inner layer of the heart. The outer layer of the heart is more, I'd say, the conscious sense of self. You think about God, how God is in the cosmos and the universe and all that, and it's very inspiring. However, God is not limited to being the God, the creator of the cosmos and the universe, because that is still some type of intellectual framework that is, limited. Hashem is really beyond that. And believe it or not, you have a part of your heart that is antenna for the kind of more impressive parts of the heart, the more relatable God as creator type of relationship. Yet you have a part of the heart that is super rational, that connects to God beyond any rational construct. That's called the Pnimius Halev, the inner part of the heart. Okay. Now, there's good news and bad news. One second. Let me see. Okay, back to our program. So the good news is that it's actually much more attainable to inspire yourself. Meditation is key for all inspiration. Focusing on something is how you awaken emotions towards that thing. When you think of God as creator and God's relationship to the world, that is very controllable because anybody can choose to focus on any topic and create, connection, mental and emotional connection to it. However, there's obviously a aspect of God that is so much more essential and deeper than as creator, and it's even inexplicable. It's beyond explanation. Yet we, as children of God, in the image of God, we have there's a child, love their parent because the parent is my protector and my conceived me, or all these it's much more essential than an explanation, right? And that's how a baby can notice the parent because it's such a deep bond. It's beyond any construct. The reality, though, is that we don't live on that very essential subconscious level, but it's there. So I'm just summarizing yesterday because we didn't do that. We didn't do it together. Right.
This was yesterday's, Tanya.
Yesterday, yeah. Okay. Now we continue, page 82. The reason that not every person merits this rank in the service of the heart, meaning, i.e., we're talking the service from the pnimius, from the depth of the heart in a state of pnimiut, right? This essential, super rational, love, connection from the core of your soul, the super rational core of the soul to God. How come we can't awaken that and be totally, God-centric, just like we're parent, could be like parent-centric, is that within the person, the faculty, next page, is in a state of exile and captivity. And this is actually kind of parallel to the state of the exile of the Shekhinah. We talk about diaspora. We just observed the Tisha B'Av yesterday. Mm-hmm. It wasn't just a horrible tragedy, death and destruction and exile. It was also a displacement of a connection to the depth of God in a revealed way that existed when there was a temple. And that's what we say, exile says the Shekhinah, God's presence is in exile. Mm-hmm. But you should know, being that you have in your soul like a miniature version of God, in a sense, a spark of God, the Shekhinah, which is the spark of divinity that's in the divine soul. So forget the cosmic level, the gods and gods in hitting and concealment after the destruction, but think about it very personal. God's the Shekhinah, the God element of your soul, is in concealment within your layers of concealment. The cause of the exile of the divine spark of the soul, right? Or the meaning like this. It's hard to you have to realize when you learn Hasidism, you're going very much back and forth to different angles of the movie in a sense. Like in a movie you have flashbacks and it cuts to the present of the character in the present and there's a flashback. So not the same exact idea, but the idea of that you're talking on the soul and you're talking the individual and the cosmic, and it's going back and forth here. So now we're back to the cosmic. The cause of the exile is, as in the words of the sages, when the Jews were exiled to Babylon by the first destruction of the first temple, the Shekhinah went with them. So that's a famous saying of the Gemara about when the Jews went to Babylon, the Shekhinah was also exiled with them. Okay. But now apply that to the individual level of the God spark, the Shekhinah within you. This means that when a spark is in a state of Babylon, meaning when an individual person, an individual Jew who has a spark, this very high spark of God in them, but is in Babylon, is kind of enmeshed in Babylonian culture, that means the Shekhinah, that is a kind of a microcosmic, zoom in of the Shekhinah being displaced.
Boy.
Meaning, what's displacement? What does it mean captivity? Is that you're not in your natural element to express your deepest natural self. You become subservient to a foreign master, to a foreign ism.
Boy.
Now, going to the movie now to the individual, flashing, the camera's cutting into the individual. This is so because he has vested the innermost point of his heart in that aspect of the universe, which is the opposing counterpart to holiness. When a person chooses to enmesh themselves in the other side, which is a Kabbalistic term for the other side, the side of unholiness or of ego or of, just otherness to God, right?
Right.
Concealment of God. Namely, he gives an example, in the soiled garments, which would mean mundane matters and worldly desires, which are known as Bavel, as Babylon. So interesting to note. Doesn't say. There's a whole in Kabbalah, and I don't know it, but apparently in the Arizal, the great Kabbalists, they talk about Bavel, which is, in many ways the first time the Jews were in a post-temple exile, becomes an archetype for like enmeshment in foreign culture. Okay? What that is, I don't know, but that's for simplistic sake, you're enmeshed in unholiness.
Right.
Which is not the natural place for a divine spark, to be enmeshed in layers of unholiness. Okay, this exile, so again, we're going, it's very apropos, Tisha B'Av, we were exiled into Babylon the first time on a microcosm level. That means the soul, the divine spark of the soul is enmeshed in a 21st century Babylon, which is, physical hedonism or whatever, even mundane, even just mundane, you have to realize we're not saying all mundane activity is evil. We're talking just, it is not, you can't call it holiness in a revealed way. It's layers. Now, going to your work and paying your bills, is that unholy? No, it's actually good. But when a person identifies with their identity as their career, that is a form of misplaced identity, because the divine soul is not limited. Is not primarily about being a career or making money or taking care. That's a necessary component of life, but it's not a essential identity. Anyways, yeah. So I'm saying
it's on the other bed in the.
Okay. This exile, right, the personal exile of the divine soul being enmeshed in mundane matters and worldly desires, aka Babylon. This exile, we're now going to compare this to a halacha, a Jewish law, the Jewish law of circumcision. The Jewish law of circumcision, and I am not a mohel by any means, so I don't really know that much, but I'll tell you a very basic law, is that circumcision has two parts of it. Jewish circumcision has two parts of it. One is the removal of the foreskin, the coarse outer layer, and then the second is the removal of under the foreskin, there's a thin membrane, which is also has to be removed. And those two stages is considered what Jewish circumcision is. Okay, this exile that we said that the soul is enmeshed in hedonism, I'd say is a good term, or just mundane orientation. This exile corresponds to the foreskin that covers the covenant and the innermost point of the heart. So just like the human body has a physical foreskin, the male body, the heart, by way of metaphor, has two layers of coverings. One is it has layers of covering. The heart has a foreskin, and we see this. This is not just a poetic, Kabbalistic thing. This is from Moshe. Moshe said, "You shall circumcise the foreskin of your heart." Mm-hmm. He uses that language that you should circumcise the foreskin of your heart, the blockage of your heart. If you look, it says, we know a famous thing, we said it yesterday, the Jewish people do teshuvah, Mashiach comes, right?
Amen.
So also on a person, if you do teshuvah, you experience a certain redemption, a certain closeness to God. But to do that, what does it mean to do teshuvah? Well, let's use in our lingo in this particular letter, it means circumcise your heart. I mean, Moshe said, you want to do teshuvah, circumcise your heart. Okay, we got to now zoom in on this mechanism of return in a language of circumcision. Here's what it means. Be well. It means in circumcision, we said there's two stages, I just told you. There's milah, the excision, the outer layer, the outer foreskin, and priya, uncovering the membrane. Respectively, we talk the coarse foreskin and the thin membrane. With respect to the foreskin of the heart, so that's in the physical, but now in the heart, we're talking emotionally circumcising your heart. It means removal of the foreskin of the heart, which are the coarse desires. So get rid of your hedonism. And then number two, you can't suffice with that. You have to also take away the thin membrane, representing the subtle desires of the heart. These two grades is the spiritual, these are emotional, spiritual levels of Mila and Priya. Now, it says in halacha, in Jewish law, for mohels, if one performed Mila, the circumcision, which means the outer foreskin, but did not then remove the inner, the inner membrane, the Priya, it's as if it's not circumcised, meaning you have to go take care of that surgically after. Because after zooming back and forth, we're going to now Jewish law by a male organ, and we're going to apply it to a psycho-spiritual level of the emotional heart. Mm-hmm. So all of Torah, by the way, is one. So whatever exists on the most pedestrian, the most mechanical halachic terms has its counterpart in spiritual terms. So we're doing both here. We're showing the law for the mechanical part of circumcision. Now we're applying it to the inner dimension, the psycho-spiritual part.
Wow.
So, which means, so I want to actually point out this. We know Abraham was given a commandment pre-Torah, pre-Sinai, to circumcise himself and his family and his sons, right? And even Ishmael, right? Wow. Even Ishmael was. And then, later on, the Jews got the Torah and they kind of re-got the mitzvah of circumcision. So what's the difference of, one version 1.0 of circumcision pre-Sinai by Abraham and circumcision 2.0 post-Sinai after Moshe gave it again?
Which was?
That in the times of Abraham, you could suffice with doing the foreskin, the coarse layer. But the kind of subtle membrane, that could stay. That wasn't an issue. Post Sinai, you got to also take care of the membrane. Why is that? Because after they got the Torah, they now had a higher expectation of self-refinement, of circumcising the heart. Because after all is said and done, we continue in the middle of page 84, the innermost point of the heart is still covered by a garment of thin sackcloth, of klipa. This is fascinating because you could say, why? Because. Why did God make a difference, upgrade the circumcision from pre-Sinai to post? Because. Who knows? We don't know what God wants, but God said that. But if you learn a little bit of Kabbalah, a little bit of Hasidism, you appreciate that it's parallel a psycho-spiritual transformation of the Jewish identity. That it was expected after Sinai, now, after they had the revelation of God and expecting to be living this extremely high-level divine life code with all the mitzvahs, 613, it now means you can't just say, oh, you know, I believe in God, but, you know, I reserve the right to go, you know, have time for myself, self-time. You know, for example, they say Caesar said, rend unto the Lord what is his and rend unto to Caesar what is Caesar's. I think that. I don't know, that's what I heard. Okay. Because that is, and that's very much it's a religious outlook, but it lends room. You know, God is like for this time, but then I need me time for this time. Judaism says, no, your job is to reveal divinity in everything, even the subtle parts of life. Amen. Because if you reserve the right to have a sense of non-God discovery in the subtle parts of life, that is a concealment. That is a klipa, or a covering, a foreskin, a subtle one. It's a membrane. Your ego could mean like gross, obnoxious ego. It could also mean an acronym of edging God out. When you edge God out, even if it's something, and we have this mandate to get the charger soon. In a few minutes, it's such time after time. Even a subtle covering over of the soul is exile and captivity. Now, are you following? Anybody questions? Because we're going back and forth. Okay, so back to this this mitzvah, or this kind of commandment that Moshe said, circumcise your heart. The foreskin, the coarse part of the heart, the coarse part of the covering over your soul, that you have to do that yourself, right? You have to do that yourself, because if you follow the Torah and the mitzvahs, it happens to be a manual to not live with klipa, not live with these. Klipa means a shell, a covering. It finds a way through the 613 mitzvahs, which encompass your life from morning till sleep, from cradle to grave. It basically says, you know, don't do covering blockage stuff. Here's clean energy.
Ooh, good one.
Okay. However, the removal of the thin membrane is a difficult matter for man. Can anybody here think, what does it mean, the thin membrane? What, like, so, you know, eating pork, God forbid, is a coarse blockage of the soul. Even being a kosher hedonist, someone who indulges, is also a kind of a coarse blockage of the soul. Like, you're a religious Jew, and your whole, waking hours is like, how do I get a nicer house and a nicer food, and etc. Like, that's obviously like a diversion, it's a blocking you from godliness, if that's your preoccupation. But what would be a subtle blockage of the soul? Anybody want to take a stab at that? I guess.
The Yetzer Hara telling you certain things are fine when they're not.
Well, I think that's coarse.
Oh, okay.
It's like
Yeah.
it's more black and white. Like
Yeah,
the
yeah.
HR is tricking you to have a coarse,
Yeah.
hedonistic thing. What's a subtle?
Is this one, Rabbi?
Yeah.
So,
Wait a minute. Subtle that you don't have so much control on. Put it like that. Coarse stuff.
I'll still
Say, okay.
So somebody wants to sleep in instead of get on time to davening.
I think that's still in the coarse bucket
Okay.
because it's clear you should go to daven. You should be a
Okay.
lazy, earthy bump. Like it's more. I mean, I guess not black. There's levels of black and white. Let's be honest. There's gray. But I'm saying the sense of how's your day going to be if you don't go. If you have the opportunity to pray in the morning, and you don't, that's pretty coarse.
Right.
I mean,
What about feelings? What about feelings? Just loving Hashem.
So the way I was reading in the Steinsaltz Tanya, great book, amazing infomercial for only $9.99, plus shipping and handling. The ego. I don't know what you call it. Not the ego as in the when we say ego, we tend to think like arrogant. I'm not saying the sense of self. The sense of self. The sense of self is kind of tricky because the real sense of self should be I am a phenomenon of existence of consciousness stemming from a God consciousness, right? That's your real sense of self, right? Even science doesn't have a real explanation. They call it the hard problem of consciousness. Science has a lot of unclarity how to explain scientifically consciousness because the soul is it's a hard thing to explain, I would say. The real sense of self, I'm consciousness. I'm literally a unique channel of God consciousness, of something way bigger than just what's eat, sleep, drink, survive. That's the reality is we have a body, we have an animal soul, software operating system that kind of says, no, you got to survive. You got to take care of yourself. So the sense of self is very conflicted. On one hand, I know I'm a mystery. I'm something supernatural. At the same time, I got to survive. So, and this is the challenge of ego, is that we don't have so much control of sense of self being truly aligned as something that stems from God consciousness. We tend to think, I'm funny, I'm this, I'm that, I'm smart. We tend to view ourselves, and then we're like, oh, but I can't just be that. Like, and then it's a never ending. In other words, the fact that we struggle with sense who we really are is a way God made it. You're always struggling with what am I? Am I altruistic or am I survivalistic, et cetera, et cetera? Like this, and we say this is the sense of the divine soul versus the animal soul constantly battling inside.
So, Rabbi, we have to work.
Listen, it's very hard, but no. To know that you should be a civilized human being, the Torah was given. The Torah was given to make a Jew a civilized, not just physically civilized, but a spiritually, emotionally civilized person. Do these things. And of this, it's written, next page, that with the coming of Mashiach, God will circumcise your heart. To love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul for the sake of your life. Where you will basically, when Mashiach comes, you will have no more angst and confusion of who you really are. You'll know you are nothing other than a spark. You're a spark of this cosmic God consciousness. And everything is really going to be, you'll see everything is stemming from God's life force and consciousness. It'll be very clear. But that's the Mashiach will come. That's when God will take away his own. In other words, think about Adam and Eve pre-sin of the tree of knowledge and post-sin. What was the difference? There's many ways to look at it, but one was pre-sin, they saw a beautiful garden, they saw their bodies, and there was no shame. Everything was just a extension, a manifestation of God's, beautiful spectrum of world and stuff. Why would we be embarrassed of the sexual organs? It's a manifestation of a God power, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what it was. Like and the beautiful trees and the birds and everything was just like it existed physically, but it was so aligned with its source energy. It's beautiful. There's nothing, there's no shame, there's no concealment. Everything is just spreading forth of God's panorama of, creation.
Wow.
But once they sinned, what happened? Now everything has to contend with a sense of concealment of God, which we call a sense of self, an ego. But the ego is conflicted. Am I God energy? Am I self energy? That's the way it is, though. So it's not like you can't really do anything about it. This is the world we're created into.
So what do we do about it?
Oh, what do we do? As Rabbi Stein, he has a great book called We Jews, Who Are We? And What Do We Do Now? What do we do now? Glad you asked, because the Tanya, even in a pre-Mashiach world, in a enmeshed, broken world, gives us pathways. That is why this love, and this goes back to, right? This is why your inner part of your heart, that sense of everything is nothing other than an extension of God's energy, that's hidden under the membrane, under even the thin part of the ego. And the love you would love to have is all trapped under that membrane. If you could get that love, it would be from the depth of the heart, from the truly innermost part, and it transcends the faculty of dat, of consciousness, of rationality. And that's why he connects another thing we know of Mashiach. Mashiach will come when the generation of Israel is caught unaware. The Gemara says. So typically the way it's understood in the Gemara that, it's going to get really, really bad. The Jewish people is going to be totally unaware of God. Or the world will be unaware. Which is, hey, the good news is that we've checked that off the box, We're ready for Mashiach, I guess. But the Alter Rebbe learns in a deeper way that Mashiach will come when we have access to the super rational, we're unaware of God, that we are transcending rational concept of God. His coming is the manifestation. Mashiach's coming is the manifestation of the innermost point, which is universal to all Jews. And likewise, the emergence of the universal Shekhinah of the entire community of Israel from exile and captivity forevermore. When the Jewish people start realizing we're more than just smart, Nobel Prize winners, we have this access to the great mysteries of the soul and the great mysteries of the transcendent part of the soul. That's a Mashiach. When that becomes normal, Mashiach will be here.
Amen.
Is that possible? Realistically, is it possible in this world?
Similarly, that's a good question.
People don't even understand the concept of Hashem in the coarse coarse way. Forget the membrane, the innermost membrane.
Please ask that question after we finish the next page. Then I will give you my.
Okay. I have to leave though a little bit early today. I'm sorry.
Today's a digress. It's a post-fast.
No, it was very good.
Similarly, every particular spark of the Shekhinah inherent in the soul of every individual Jew emerges from the moment from exile and captivity during that momentary life, which is prayer. Prayer is kind of a micro Mashiach moment. During the service of his heart, from the depths of his heart, from the innermost point, which becomes divested of the concealing foreskin. When you're praying, it's almost like God's giving you a window of transcendence, like a small window, time window, and soars upward to cleave to him with a fierce passion. In the spirit of the phrase, for the sake of your life. When you can sense, prayer, believe it or not, could be a time when you sense how there's more to life than just, health, wealth, and, family and whatever. Prosperity, yeah. It's more to life than that. Everything's really, what you really want is God.
Amen.
Those are just, manifestations of God energy. That's what the great Hasidim, the great Hasidic disciples of the Alter Rebbe and the later generations, say they'd pray for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 hours. Why? They were trying to get beneath, what do I really want? What do you really want? Like they were trying to help themselves know what they really want. And this too, a man may be considered to be in a state of hesach das, of unawareness. For this state transcends the the knowledge of man and his meditation, the greatness of God. When you get that transcendent awareness, really everything is God, it's kind of a gift granted by God from heaven.
Wow. From
the radiation of the supernal countenance. As it's written, may God make his countenance shine upon you. And as it's written, the Lord your God will circumcise, he will remove he'll remove the thin layer of the heart, this thin layer of insensitivity. So, answer number 1, this is really fascinating stuff, is that basic Torah life helps you not be a coarse, not get rid of the coarse temptations of the heart, or the coarse layers of the heart. It civilizes the Jew to, want food in a more elevated way, to have family in an elevated way, money and job and success in an elevated way. You shouldn't have a coarse sense that I want money because I want money. I want food. At least takes care of the coarse, corruption possible of the needs of life. But to go a step deeper, that you should even want, let's say, health, wealth, and family, the blessings of life, that it should be nothing more than ways of accessing God in your life. I mean, you really have a more elevated divine outlook of everything. So everything in your life now becomes a way of, once you have a real, what do you call it? An acquired taste of divinity, or a revealed taste of divinity, you want to find the divine in everything, in love, in family, in money, and pleasure. When that becomes your number 1 reorientation, that's very hard to accomplish that, because the ego, even if it's not coarse, it's meant to be a sense of, I'm a human being trying to survive with, in a civilized way. It covers over that you're a divine being, really.
Boy.
That can find the divine in everything. So what do we say? Well, bad news. Mashiach, to have that naturally, that's when Mashiach comes. Okay, what does it leave us? So tool number 1 is note you can have this in a micro way, in a small window during prayer. Prayer is a time to reorient yourself to what you really want, that you are a divine being wanting to connect to the divine, the God, and all things. Tomorrow's Tanya will tell us an even greater life hack.
Ooh. And
that will be giving charity. And giving charity, he says, remember, as I told you earlier, this seems like a very spiritual letter, but it's a fundraising letter, ultimately. He's trying to tell us Hasidim, who are poor, it wasn't like they needed, should I go to Cancun or should I give charity? That wasn't their question. It was like, should my kid have 2 slices of bread or one slice of bread, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And he was saying, you give from your income, even when it's very limited. That's really, what are you doing? You're giving from your life. Your family wants, 3 loaves of bread, and you're going to give them 2 loaves of bread. Or you want to have bread and chicken soup, and a little bit of chicken on Shabbos, and you're going to say, no, just want to have bread and just the watery soup.
Wow.
He says, that means you're giving till it hurts. You're giving till it hurts. When you give till it hurts, that means you're giving of your life. Stuff you could use for survival, 2.0. No, I'm giving it to God. That is something, without any meditation, without any prayer skill, whatever. It's a shortcut to redeem the essence of your soul to become more to the outside. Isn't that pretty cool?
Cool.
Very.
For a fundraising appeal, he explains it on a psycho-spiritual level, how this will help them, the poor middle-class Hasidim of Russia, achieve greatness in spiritual life.
Wow.
Yes, Mark.